Welcome in to Red Cedar Radar, home of Michigan State sports, where you can all just be here and enjoy and watch me and Sydney just talk and talk and talk and talk. We have a great
My favorite thing to do.
Right.
Talk and talk
exactly.
and talk and talk. Sorry.
We have a great show for you today. But first, today's episode is actually sponsored by Nudge Printing, quality collegiate apparel from two quality MSU alums, Gabe and Brittany. Love them. Shout out to them.
Mm-hmm.
All of their products are made in mid-Michigan, and you can visit nudgeprinting.com and use the code TRYUS, that is TRYUS, for $10 off of any Michigan State t-shirt. Just find the link in the show notes on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast. So first, Sydney and I will be discussing Michigan State basketball. We're going to recap Nebraska, obviously looking ahead to Michigan. This is coming out in between the game against Nebraska and the game against Michigan. Yep. And we'll be releasing this episode in two parts. The first part is going to be us breaking it down, the Nebraska game, everything like that. We're actually going to talk a little bit more about just everything in depth that's kind of happened, news, stuff like that. And then we're going to have a special guest on. We have
not special,
Justin
just
Roh.
a guest.
Not special. He is the co-founder of Blue by 90 to break down Michigan basketball. As you could tell from his title, we could just call him a guest today, not a special guest. So
guest.
That is where we're at. Just take the special out. Nothing special about it. But anyway, so to start, Sydney, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. I spent
That's
a
good.
week in Grand Rapids. Well, not a week, 2 days. And got to watch Michigan State hockey lose two games. They lost to Ferris State. They lost to Michigan Tech.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to get into it too much. Michigan State goes on the road to play Ohio State and Columbus this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
It is what it is. Not a great start to the second half, but it is what it is. The first game was not great. I mean, Ferris State had 3 goals on 5 shots. Like, that was just not a good start. Chased the whole game. Wasn't great. Michigan Tech, on the other hand, was a little bit more of a bummer because Michigan State had the lead with a minute left in the game, and then Michigan Tech scored. And they sort of got a power play there, and it was sort of an official issue where the refs weren't calling penalties for the whole game. And then they called 2 very questionable calls at the end, one with a minute left, which gave Michigan Tech the power play, which is when Michigan Tech scored because they had also pulled their goalie. And they had a 6-on-4 advantage, and you're going to score every time if you have a 6-on-4.
Yeah.
There's just no way around that. And Michigan State went into overtime to play Michigan Tech, and Michigan State lost in overtime because they got another penalty, and then it went to 4-on-3, and we all know how that goes also.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to kill a penalty when you only have 3 guys. So they lost that game too.
Yeah.
Not great. Just to give you any context, Adam Nightingale's post-game press conference was 2 minutes long. That's it. That was it. He just had 3 words to say, and that's it. So,
it was bad. 3 words.
Yes, right. Exactly. But Michigan State's on the road this week. There's a bunch of other stuff that I kind of wanted to get to. But I don't have the time for it. For example, Elijah Collins just announced that he's going to the transfer portal, or an MSU spokesperson says. Mm-hmm. Yeah, how do you feel about that?
He's been around as long as at MSU as I have been around, and I just feel like sorry, my dog's barking. I just feel like he excelled in 2019. He had an amazing season, and then ever since then, there's been something missing for him, but I think he's such a likable guy, and he had flashes this year when he would get out there of some really good stuff. I'm just sad to see him go since he's been a Michigan State guy for so long.
No, and I think that he'll have success wherever he goes. If he's going to find the right home, and I definitely have a lot of confidence in that happening. And then there was also news today that defensive line coach Marco Coleman is leaving to go back to Georgia Tech. So that's interesting. Obviously he came from Georgia Tech. Now he's going back. Don't know. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I feel like it's always sad to see someone go like that. I don't really know much about him or the situation with Georgia Tech, but I think it's just a bummer either way.
I think they'll find a replacement. Everything will be fine, is what it is. The main stuff that I really want to get into, and I don't know, if anyone wants to let me know on the forums, if you're listening and you want to let me know, I would really like to know where Michigan State fans are at on this, because Jim Harbaugh has had an interesting week. As I would like to say, he likes attention, right? He loves attention. He seems like he loves to play the media, loves to do all of that. So this is the third year and I'm kind of over it at this point, but this is the third year in a row that Jim Harbaugh has been fiddling with jobs at the NFL level. And he spoke to the Carolina Panthers owner earlier this week. Not great, full hour-long phone call. And then also he went today, we're recording on a Wednesday, just an FYI, he went on today to a Carolina radio show and said that he said this is a quote. He said, "I think I'll be coaching at Michigan next year," which is a little bit concerning if you're a Michigan fan, right? I'm just going to say it, right? Michigan, their trajectory of their program, back-to-back Big Ten titles, back-to-back CFP appearances, right? You have all of that, and then all of a sudden, where's your coach going to be? We don't know. Yeah. So that is very, very, very interesting. Again,
I think it's funny that his team had such a poor, unlike themselves performance against TCU. I was watching on my phone and at a restaurant, so I feel like I was kind of all over the place.
I disagree with you.
Okay.
I'll explain why. So I've been saying this all year. Michigan, so listen to this. Michigan was, Mike Valeni on 97.1, Michigan State alum, everyone in Michigan probably hates him, right? He said that Michigan has the potential to win the national title. I vehemently disagree. Cannot disagree more with anything else that anyone else has ever said. A little bit of hyperbole here, but whatever. I was always weird about the way that Michigan was winning these games. You go in and you're like, okay, they're such a second half team. I mean, there are conspiracies about how they had video of this team making such good second half adjustments. And I'm like, if they, that is such a stupid thing for anyone to say, first of all. I just don't. No way anyone that's logical could believe that, unless you're trolling. But I always thought that J.J. McCarthy was good, not elite. I also think that the Big Ten has not been good the last couple of years. Okay, Wisconsin hasn't been itself, right? You have several other teams who sometimes are there at the end. The Big Ten West has drastically gone off a cliff in the last couple of years, right? You have just a Big Ten conference that isn't. You got Michigan, you got Ohio State, then you got Penn State. Those are your rankings, right? Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. Boom. The rest of the conference can go F itself. I don't even know why they're there. You know what I mean? It's such. There have been Michigan State had a surprising season, but I think even Michigan State benefited from having a weak conference schedule. So the fact that Michigan lost to TCU does not surprise me in the slightest.
So what I was going to say was...
Yeah, sorry. Before
they lost.
Greatly cut you off.
They lost, and
right.
I was at a Red Wings hockey game surrounded by Michigan fans, so the loss felt good in my heart. It felt good. Anyways, and then he goes around... So he is underperforming and in the bowl game, in his bowl games, consistently. And then every time he's flirting with the NFL. It just seems wrong in so many ways. that he's able to do this over and over, and Michigan fans are just like, he's our holy savior, bring him back every time. I feel like at a certain point, if he's not winning the games he should be winning at the end of the season, and then he's constantly like, oh, might go here. At a certain point, if I was a Michigan fan, I'd be like, just go then. You know, you've got us to this point, but now you're playing with our hearts, and I don't like that. I like loyalty. So that's where I stand on it as a non.
Yeah, I mean, it is sort of funny looking at, like, on the outside looking in. I'm, again, over it because I just think that it's you know, I mean, the first time he did it, sure, I think that Jim Harbaugh was more so looking for a contract than anything else.
Right.
Or you could make that argument, right? But, like, now he's making money. Like, now he's, you know, he's making, like, 10 mil or whatever he's making.
I don't even know.
I think it's, like, 8.5 plus incentives. Like, he's, you know, if he wins the Big Ten title every year and he wins the national title, I mean, if he gets the CFP, I think those incentives get him to 10 mil, right? Like, almost Mel Tucker's contract. So I think that, like, in that sense, I think that it's like, as a Michigan fan, it's got to suck, right? Like, your program is finally at a point where it's doing the things it's supposed to. I do think that Jim Harbaugh's lack of a conference bowl game win is concerning. Like, he's had one in however many seasons, right? Like, he's 1 in 5 or whatever it is. Right. And so that sucks, but at the same time, I don't think that that's reason enough to cancel him for it. I think that you're getting to the CFP. If you're losing, like, the Alamo Bowl, or if you're losing, you know what I mean? Like, I would much rather lose the Fiesta Bowl, especially when it's a CFP, than anything else.
That's true, but I
don't think that it's a dig to say that Jim Harbaugh has lost, you know, every bowl game, because now he's getting them to the CFP. Sure, he lost to Georgia last year. I didn't think that Michigan was going to beat Georgia. They were never good enough to beat Georgia, but they were good enough this year to beat TCU, and they didn't. I think that's where the concern lies. However, I do think that a Cade McNamara-led offense maybe doesn't lose to TCU. But with that said, I also don't think that you get to the CFP this year with Cade McNamara.
Yeah, I was seeing some stuff about that on Twitter, and I do love, like, I bet Cade McNamara is somewhere laughing a little bit about that game, because I think you're right. I think he could have won that game for them, but again, I don't know. He couldn't have gotten them to that game. I agree completely with what you're saying. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think that he would have, like, because that has sort of been the issue, right? And I think that Blake Corum also might have hurt them a bit. I think that coaching decisions hurt them a bit. Like, I don't think, like, everyone wants to pin this all on J.J. McCarthy. I mean, McCarthy's the quarterback, but I think that a lot of that had to do with the coaching issues, and that just goes back to what, like, I think that Jim Harbaugh was very good this year, and he's proved me wrong in a lot of ways, in the sense of, like, I always thought that he was a bad coach, right? I always thought that he wasn't good enough to coach college football. I thought he was a better NFL coach than a college coach, actually. But then he started winning the Big Ten, started going to the CFP, started beating Ohio State, and now I sort of changed my mind. But this game against TCU was very, very, very 2017 Jim Harbaugh. Like, no concept of game management. I mean, J.J. McCarthy does not have any concept of the read option. Just so much that, like, I feel like it's a coaching failure as much of it is as a game management play calling disaster. So, yeah, I think Michigan State fans had a bit of fun with that, and I think that they're having more fun now with with the news that he might just up and leave for the NFL.
Yeah. But I don't know how I feel. Do I want him to up and leave for the NFL, or do I want him to stay? And that's a question that I'll have to think about, because I don't really
care. If you're an MSU fan and you're rooting and you're rooting for Michigan's demise, you definitely want Harbaugh in the NFL. And let me tell you why. Because Michigan is its own worst enemy when it comes to hiring a head coach. They are their own worst enemy. They do not hire someone based on their resume. They hire them because they went to the school and they support Bo
flashy.
Schembechler. They talk against the school, they're out. They're not a candidate. Like, it is not a culture hire. Like, if you want to change the culture at a program, Michigan is not the school for you.
So what do you think about, so we're going to talk about basketball, but what do you think about Juwan Howard as a hire and a coach? Because I would say he falls along those lines of being more of a flashy hire.
That's where, like, Juwan Howard's weird because I still don't understand him. Like, I just don't, it's tough because he's shown that he can recruit some really high level players and do a lot with them. But I think that if you gave Izzo Juwan Howard's program, I think that they win a national title first year.
Oh, well, that's giving a program to a master.
I'm
but
100% serious because I think that here's my I bet that remember when Michigan lost to UCLA in the Elite Eight, and UCLA went on to the Final Four and eventually the title game. Michigan not only did they lose that game, they didn't even score 50 points. That is not something that would have happened under Izzo, and I can guarantee you. Because if you have a good team if you have a team that's that good, no way that you should just lay an egg. And you can't even score 50. That is worse than laying an egg. That is the worst thing you could do in that situation. That was a worst case scenario for that program. Because a Final Four is a banner that you hang on in your rafters, right?
Right.
Like that is a big accomplishment, and that was done in like one of Juwan Howard's first 2 years, right? I don't even know. It could have been his first year. I don't remember. But I'm just saying that was like something that was a big first step for him, and then that doesn't happen. And I think that, so where I was at is when Juwan Howard was initially hired, I was very skeptical, like you were mentioning, because like this goes back to Michigan hires a lot of people who went to Michigan, who have a very specific set of things where they've been, and Juwan Howard fit that mold. And so then Juwan Howard goes out and goes deep into the tournament. And then he sort of proved me wrong, as they would say, right? Like he changed my mind. I thought that Juwan Howard was actually a really good coach. Then, now he's doing what he's doing now. Do I have less confidence? Absolutely. I do not think that it's like the program's going. It's very much, if anything, it's steadied out. I don't think that the program's climbing. If you're a bubble team, what was Michigan last year? Where were they at? Were they like on the bubble? They weren't high.
I don't even know.
I think they were on the bubble or something.
No
like, you know what
idea.
I mean? Like, you're just putting back-to-back mediocre seasons up. I don't think that is warranted for Michigan. Like, that's just not great.
I just think this is a completely different avenue. I think John Beilein as a guy is just so much more likable than Juwan Howard for multiple reasons. And ever since Juwan Howard has taken over, my dislike for their program has increased.
Beilein was a damn good coach.
Yes, that's what I think.
Good.
I think they just took such a step down after him, and in character and in coaching style and like skills. I just think
that would be the ultimate rehire if you're Michigan, I think, because Beilein got this program back to a spot that it hadn't been. He was the D'Antonio of Michigan basketball, right?
And he was him and Izzo had such a good relationship, which is not usually what you find.
I think that Beilein was very good for the culture of the program.
I think so.
I will say this though, and I don't know 100%. Okay,
yeah.
I think that this has sort of gotten away from Juwan Howard a little bit. I think that there are a couple things that are true. One, I think that Juwan Howard, when he first came in, I think that he was taking a very good approach to Michigan basketball, because Michigan has a history of having programs where they are, arrogant, right? I think that and we've talked about how that hurts Michigan in the long run, where teams just want to kick their ass, right?
Right.
And so I think that that's true, but I also think that Juwan Howard isn't going to step in and say, like, Hunter Dickinson, you're being a dick. You know what I mean? Like, he's not going to do that. And I don't blame him either, because if Hunter Dickinson performs better when he does that, completely don't blame him. You know what I mean? Like, but at the same time, like, I would just hire guys that don't have to be nuts for them to be good. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Let's stop talking about Michigan for a second, just so I can take a deep breath.
Of course.
We'll get back into Michigan in a second and talk about a little bit of a preview before Michigan State basketball takes them on Saturday. I just wanted to highlight something about our coach, Izzo, who we love and adore and care for deeply. We just recently at Spartans Illustrated did a interview with Izzo. Brad, you were there. You shook his hand. Have you washed your hands yet?
Yeah.
No, say
I
no.
took a shower today, so yep.
You kept your one hand out the shower because you were like, can't wash this after you touched him.
Me.
I get it completely.
Yeah. He asked me what my name was. That was it. That was my
you said,
moment.
I don't remember. Because that's what I would have said.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good. It was a good moment. But Justin Roh, who used to work, in TV in Michigan, he did the interview. Nice guy. He's been doing some work with us. He's going to be doing more work similar to this. I got to edit the video. I've been taking on a lot of the graphic design work for our site. So, it's been very exciting. Before we get into more, let's play a little clip from that interview.
I've been surprised by some teams, obviously Purdue, namely the one team that kind of shot up out of nowhere. I feel like it's always a deep conference every single year, no matter what the outside says. What do you see from the Big Ten overall?
Well, I think that's true. I think people were ready to kind of talk about the Big Ten like it wasn't as good. I don't think the very top has the 3-4 teams in the top 10 like it used to have. I really don't. Right now, anyway. I mean, Purdue's there. I think another surprise team might be Ohio State.
What about your team? Where do you think your team is in that pecking order?
It's been hard for me to evaluate our team because of the fact that Jaden Akins was out for 13 weeks. He came back. He was out for 9, came back for 2, went out for 2 more. Never got any sync there. And of course, Malik Hall being out, maybe our most reliable guy, our most versatile guy. He just came back the other night and played pretty well, considering he played 12 minutes at 11 points. But, the next game, it's going to take a couple of weeks. So I don't think we know who the Michigan State team is yet. The good news is I think we played well enough in some big games early that I think we get everybody, without those guys, we get everybody back. We could be a team that's right there also.
Fans that want to watch the whole thing, you can go to YouTube and watch it. It's pretty cool. It's on youtube.com/@SpartansIllustrated. It's pretty cool. If you're not already listening on YouTube, obviously our podcast is available in video and audio on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever the hell you're listening. Very exciting stuff.
So I just want to say one more thing about Izzo, and then we'll give a little recap of the Nebraska basketball game.
Before I forget, Sydney, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. That's the second time you cut me off, but that's okay.
There is an extended version of the interview available only on our website at SpartansIllustrated.com. It is a recruiting interview segment, where fans can take a look at that as well.
Yeah. Okay, am I good to continue?
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Okay, so one little story about Izzo, and then I will talk about Nebraska. I was at Michigan State's game against Buffalo, and I was sitting in the press conference videotaping Izzo's, presser, all his questions and everything. At the end of the game, I'm sitting in the second row. At the end of the game, he's saying Happy New Year to all you guys, and then keeps talking and then stops and goes, and ladies, and he looks me directly in the eyes, and I died. I was like, I played it cool. I was like, thank you, of course, thank you. On the inside, I was like, oh my gosh, Izzo just looked at me. But I played it professional. No one knew that I was screaming on the inside. So that's my highlight as of recently.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. I feel like I won an award. Okay, moving on to the Nebraska recap. So Michigan State just played Nebraska last night. We're recording on Wednesday. They played last night on Tuesday. And they won. It was a good, solid game. I have some specific facts from the game, but overall, my highlight from the game is that they were consistent almost throughout the entire game, and they just really looked like they were clicking more than they have looked like they have been clicking over the past couple games. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and maybe we'll get into a bit of this too, especially in our guest appearance later on, in the second part of this show. But, I think that it basically all goes down to injuries. I think that Michigan State is healthy again. And like we were mentioning, in the interview with Izzo too, like I think that Izzo said that he doesn't know what this team is. He doesn't know what he's seen. He hasn't seen what this team can become. And so, and a lot of that, right? Like I think that at this point in the season, you would have seen that by now. But I think that, when Michigan State early on in the schedule, they're sort of battle tested already, right? And that's something that Izzo talks about too, is that Michigan State has played, they've gone through that gauntlet of playing against Gonzaga, they've played against Alabama, they've played against, big teams who can win in March. And Izzo talks about how that is a very good that was very good for his team, right? The only thing that he's mentioned that he would have changed is the timing of everything, maybe, right? But I do think that the way that Michigan State played against both Gonzaga, even though that was a loss, and especially Kentucky, is a precursor to what Michigan State can do. So I do think that Michigan State has a lot of potential, and they could go deep in March. But do I know for sure? For sure? No, absolutely not.
Yeah, well, so hard to say. It always is hard. You've discussed this before. Basketball is up and down.
It's so random too, with March Madness. I mean, look at the Big Ten hasn't won an NCAA tournament win since Michigan State won in 2000. So,
and that's going to change. No, you know what? Let's go off on a tangent for a second about this. Michigan State would have won in 2020 with Cassius Winston, and I will stand on that hill, and I will die on that hill forever.
Would have, could have, should have. I know. It's crazy, isn't it?
It makes me tear up sometimes when I think about it. Anyways, moving back to Nebraska and off that tangent, because if we stay on that, I could talk all night.
I also think that under a CFP format, 2013, Michigan State would have won the title.
Well, like you said, would have, could have, should have.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so back to Nebraska. Something that I thought was amazing was at the end of the first half, MSU had gone on a 23-4 run against Nebraska. That's what I want to see. And in our previous episode when I interviewed Carter Elliott, we discussed that MSU needs more decisive wins. That's what matters when it comes to these games. Winning... Okay, good. They won, they check it off. But having decisive wins, that's what matters when it gets to March. And a 23-4 run, although in the second half things changed a little bit, that's what gets you those decisive wins. So I thought that was a very positive streak in the game, and I hope that I see more of that.
Yeah, I would agree.
Some other facts. I thought this was the first game that we saw the most offensive fire from Jackson Kohler. His first game in double figures during his time here at MSU. There were some defensive lapses. He's a new guy. I feel like defensive lapses come when you're a new guy. But I thought he played much better on the offensive end. And I was consistently impressed.
Yeah, I
with
think
his
that,
play.
I mean, like you said, I mean, he's what, new, young, freshman, whatever.
He's
right?
maybe
So,
like 19 years old. I don't know, but
right.
yeah.
So, I think that everyone grows at their own pace, and obviously, he's just one of those guys that he's not Max Christie, at this age, right?
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, my point is everyone has their own pace, and I think that there's still a lot of room for him to grow, but it's definitely nice that you saw that offensive side from him.
And I think like I've said this before, but I think he's in the right place to grow under Izzo. Izzo even said, he has plans to develop guys like Kohler and guys like Trey Holloman, and Izzo's the guy that consistently does that, and we've seen that over the years. So that's just a peek of maybe what we'll see more consistently in the future, which I thought was nice.
Absolutely.
After the game, Izzo gave a little post-game interview on TV. The team as a whole had 24 assists, and Izzo said he even cracked a smile that he was happy with that. And I feel like that speaks to what Izzo has mentioned a little bit, that this team is very connected and this team is very unselfish, and I think that will bode well in Big Ten time because that stuff matters. But that was just a nice little bit from him at the end of the game that I thought was another positive thing that I didn't notice as I was watching. Mm-hmm. It was nice that he brought it up. Two more things, and then we can kind of discuss what we think as far as heading into Michigan. Joey Hauser ended with a double-double. I'm a Joey Hauser girl this season. I think he deserves to be playing so well, and he is. He's just been a consistent solid for this team, and he needs to be that, and I love it. And I think we definitely will need to lean on him during Big Ten play. But now having Malik Hall back, maybe some of that weight can be taken off his shoulders a little bit once Malik is back.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, Hauser, God, it's so nice. He's one of those players where it's just so nice to see him do well.
Yes, Brad. Yes, we agree.
Right, because Hauser is just at earlier in the season he was just hunting threes, he was just hunting them, and I mean, again, once you have guys going down, then it's
right.
You can't really because at that point Michigan State for a while, I think the real issue that they struggled with is that they didn't have enough guys to move around the ball,
right,
and so that was sort of what I noticed, right? You take away Malik Hall, you take away the defensive side, and even when you're in a situation where you need Hauser to play other positions that he's not comfortable playing, I think that because hasn't Hauser gone on record and been like, hey, I'm not a center, you put me in my position. Where I'm at, I know where I'm gotta be in the court. I know where I gotta be. I think that's where, because I think that's something interesting that Graham Couch actually mentioned on his podcast that I remember listening to, where he was saying Hauser can be good, he's a good guy. And I think people are often too critical of him when he's put in a place where he is relied upon too much, and right. I think that Again, Hauser, if you have guys going down and you put Hauser in a position where he might have to play center or guard Hunter Dickinson, that is just not
right.
something he can do. And so you won't have.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll see that. That's definitely a task much more fit for Mady Sissoko.
Yeah. Well, and I just feel maybe it's this, and I never noticed it before. I think Izzo's setting him up for more success this season than maybe he was before. Maybe he was jerking him around a little bit before, trying to find the best fit for him, and the best fit was always right there, and they just didn't have the space for it, or whatever. He's just found his stride, and I appreciate that so much because I think people were absolutely brutal to him in the past couple years.
I would agree.
My last point, and then we'll kind of discuss Michigan a little bit. Tyson Walker. Coaches told him to stop passing up shots, and he did exactly that. He ended the game with 21 points, and I just think he is absolutely a baller, and he gives me those feelings that Cassius Winston would give me, where it's that shot's not going in, but he makes it go in somehow. And so we need him to continue that, and I hope that he continues to not pass up shots, because the Nebraska game was definitely his game last night.
You know, as they say, Wayne Gretzky, right? If you don't, you'll miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Right.
Look at me coming in clutch with the hockey quote.
Actually, we'll be sending Tyson Walker a poster with that saying on it, maybe like a small kitten, something.
Yeah. No, we'll
maybe like Air
Bud. We'll send him the whiteboard where it says you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott.
Spartans Illustrated, Red Cedar Radar, Brad and Sydney. Yes.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's true, right? Like, I think it's interesting too, because I watch MSU hockey a lot, right? And it's funny because so David Gucciardi, and this is sort of off topic, but David Gucciardi does not, he's not a high scoring defenseman, but dude will always go for it, and I love that. And hockey's, I think definitely a sport where the risk to benefit ratio is definitely thinner, right? Like in basketball, if you miss your shot, it's 90% of the time the ball gets to the other team, right? So you know what I mean? Like there's more consideration in the shots that you take, right? In hockey, it's like there's a fight for the puck afterwards, and it's sort of a 50-50 toss-up in a lot of occasions, and you just don't know what's going to happen. So there is that, but again, like in basketball, I think that it's funny because I've always thought about that too. Like, I think that Michigan State has fell victim to taking bad shots and getting bad looks. But then at the same time, on the opposite end of that, if you're not shooting, you're not going to score.
Right.
So the shot, I mean, you got to shoot eventually because there is a shot clock, but
Correct. Yeah.
There is
well,
a shot clock.
I just think he has been hesitant since transitioning over to Michigan State, and we saw flashes of it last season where he had huge games where he wasn't missing anything, and then the next game he just wasn't shooting. So I feel like he's finally maybe on the same, path for making sure that he's getting the shots that he needs. And to just circle back to what I said before, this team is unselfish, so they want him to get the looks that he is getting. And I think those two things go together and make for a very good team environment, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Wholeheartedly.
So, Brad, This is the hot question of the night.
Yeah.
Is MSU going to beat Michigan on Saturday?
On Saturday, yes. That is my prediction.
Absolutely right. Always.
Do I think that Michigan State will win in Chrysler? No.
Absolutely right. Always. You have to believe. Have to.
If you want my unbiased opinion, I think it's going to be a split. I
want your biased opinion.
Such a hard time believing that teams will get sweeps. Such a hard time. But it's also very hard for me to separate myself from a team and predict correctly, because I am actually, this is true, okay? I am very good at predicting stuff. It only if it includes money, not good, okay? Once money is on the line, not a fan, okay? Second, but also Michigan State, can't predict them worth shit, okay? I'll give you an example. Last year, when Alabama, this is 2021, okay? When Alabama lost to Texas A&M at Kyle Field, I predicted that after week 1 on my podcast. You can go listen to it. It's Take This. That's what it's called. It was called Take This. I predicted correctly that Alabama would lose one game that year, and they would lose it to Texas A&M in Texas A&M. Bogus, right? I also predicted this correct Super Bowl champion after week 1 of the NFL season. The last 2 years. Tampa Bay, the previous, and then LA Rams as well. And then if the Eagles win this year, it'll be 3 in a row. So
this is just a moment here to let you know, Brad has traveled to the future a couple times, and he's cheating on all these predictions.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's and I've been wrong a couple times. The main point though I think I want to make though about how much I'm bad at this is that I thought Michigan would 100%, and they should have, by the way, make that known. Michigan should have beat Michigan State in 2021, right? But they didn't. Okay, I predicted the week before, that Michigan would win. However, I did correctly predict that same year that Michigan would defeat Ohio State. So there is that. So I did get that correct as well. But
what I'll say is going on the road and playing in Big Ten basketball is hard.
And that's just like,
it just
not,
is.
If I was a betting man, and I'm not, but if I was a betting man, you could not give me an odds so wide that I would take $1 on any bet to say that any team is going to beat any other Big Ten team on the road, in that environment. Like, that's just not going to happen, right? Like, you want me to say that some team's going to go into Purdue and win? Like, I wouldn't even the Central Michigan game. I don't even think there was a money line for that game. The Central Michigan game where they went into Chrysler and beat Michigan. I mean, sure, Michigan State could go do that. Do I think that they will, or would I put money on that? Absolutely not.
I mean, I'm always going to believe, because I've told you that's how I live my life. That's how I have to live my life.
Let me get that straight.
Yes,
I think Michigan State can. I think it's very doable. I also think that Michigan State has a better team than Michigan this year. Absolutely.
Yes, I agree.
But I don't know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, that is because they say in Big Ten basketball, I don't know who they are, but they say this. Win your home games and win half of your road games, and you're good. That's it. You're in the tournament. That's all you got to do.
I would like to someday, and maybe Spartans Illustrated someday will pay for me to do this. This is a dream. I want to... No, honey, I've been there. Anyways, moving on.
I was like, that's a small goal.
I want to travel with Michigan State to all of their away games, and I want to rank the places that they're playing just that year, and like do a whole special on like how hard it is to play on the road in the Big Ten, and like rank these stadiums and the fans on different elements, and like put all that content out there. So don't steal my idea, Brad, but that's something I would like to do.
Of doing the same thing, but in hockey, actually.
Well, fine. You can have that.
You can do that, yeah.
But I just think Michigan coming to the Breslin, no one plays good at the Breslin unless they're on 100%, because it's so tough. And I feel like
Northwestern.
We forget that. And I just feel like going to Chrysler later is going to be so tough.
Right.
Because it's always so tough. But I just have to believe that, like you said, I think MSU has a better team this year.
I think so too. I think that. Yeah. But at the same time, I would give other teams better chances to beat them. Does that make sense? Like, it's almost like the Michigan State basketball rivalry, I think, has the same or similar dynamic that the football rivalry does, in a way. And the reason I say that is because you look at Michigan State and their place in the rivalry in football, and I think that you could also apply that same underdog card often to Michigan State's team. Michigan's team.
You lost me. I'm sorry.
Well, what I'm getting at is that I think that Michigan oftentimes can be seen as the underdog in basketball.
Okay.
Because I think that's my main point. And so what I'm getting at, though, is that these rivalry games are always going to be close. Like, these games are just inherently hard-fought games.
That's how they're designed.
More to play for. They're designed to be exciting. Right. And so that's why I think that, and this is definitely not how statistics work, but I think that Michigan State has a harder, not less odds, but it would be a bigger challenge to win at Chrysler than a team like Central Michigan, where nobody really expects them to do that. It's the same reason why I think that Michigan State had such an easy time beating Ohio State for so long because Ohio State doesn't care. Like, if yes, Ohio State wants to win every game, and yeah, I'm sure they care in the broad sense of like we want to win our games. But like if Ohio State loses to Michigan, that is detrimental. Like you see Ohio State has lost 2 in a row to Michigan, and they want to fire their head coach. Like in a way, like Ohio State and Michigan State, I wanted them to start some sort of rivalry, but Michigan State was on the way there with 3 wins in 5 years against them. But I think that was easier for Michigan State to do because you never expected Michigan State to win really any of those games. And so it's
okay,
sort of
I
similar.
see what you're saying.
It's sort of similar here, right? In this same dynamic where Michigan is at home, but again, like Central Michigan going in there was just you wouldn't expect it to happen. And
right.
I think that sort of like unexpected factor. There's nothing to play for. You're not in it as much, right? Like it's just a MAC school, right? Like I'm not saying that these, I don't know where these players are at, but you get what I'm saying.
Yes. Well, there's just so much emotion behind it, which makes me happy because I love that, but it also makes those games so much tougher for the players and for those teams because there's so much emotion behind it. I get exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
So and just to kind of recap again, like Michigan has had such a hard time beating Michigan State, I think, because everyone thinks they're the favorite. Everyone, every year, they have been favored in so many games, and they lose to Michigan State because they end up with this target on their back, and they underperform or don't do as well. Like Michigan State comes in there, and it's a hard-fought game. It's going to be close every time. So, and when I think that it's going to be close, there's less margin for error. Is all I'm getting at.
Yes, absolutely. So. I just think we will win.
So anything can happen in any rivalry game, ever.
Oh, of course, yes. Well, that's why we love it so much. I think that's the...
Unless it's like Michigan and Minnesota and you don't know why you turn the TV on.
I just think that's why we as a society subscribe to rivalries, because you don't ever know what's going to happen truly.
Right. I mean,
psychology
that's kind of
why, I don't know.
That's kind of why I like hockey so much, to be honest. Like, I mean, you'll see the Red Wings. They'll beat Pittsburgh like 6-1 one night, and then they'll lose 6-1 a month down the road. You know what I mean? There's just that. That's kind of what makes it so exciting, and I think that's what's sort of appealing for college football fans. Is it's that the rivalry games are that, but on an escalated scale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm going to feel...
And you kind of get a break from, like, the 50-0.
Right. Of course. I just think they'll step into the Breslin tomorrow. Hunter Dickinson will be off, and Tom Izzo and his guys will walk away with the win. And then we'll move on to some other very important Big Ten games before we get to Michigan again later in the season. That's my prediction. Go ahead.
What's your final score prediction, just to sort of end this part of the episode?
I don't have one, and I think it's bad juju to pick numbers, so that's where
I'm
I
pick
am.
Numbers.
Okay, and I'm gonna not listen.
Being against it.
La 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 la.
90 to actually 90's kind of high.
That's way too high.
I'm picking random numbers out of a hat. 72 to 59.
Okay.
There it is.
If it was 90, Tom Izzo would be. If it was in the never mind. If Michigan State's score was in the 90s, Steven Izzo would get in the game, and then Justin Roh, our guest, he'd be crying, which amazing. But I was thinking you were going to say both teams were up that high, and if Michigan State let in that many points, Tom Izzo would cancel the season, cancel the team, and they'd be running sprints for the rest of their lives. Yeah. So when you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, but I get where you were going with that.
Just to kind of recap, obviously, big week coming up for Michigan State. If you liked the episode, please consider giving it a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Very exciting stuff. You can go ahead and subscribe to SpartansIllustrated.com, find our Rivals message boards, and leave us a message. Tell us what you think about the podcast, and so much more. Again, like I mentioned, this podcast is going to have 2 parts to it, right? So we actually have an almost hour-long interview with Justin Roh, the founder of BlueBy90.com. Very exciting stuff. You can also watch that. That is also on YouTube. I'll put a link in the description. But if you are listening to us on your podcast, it is going to be the next episode. So it's just next in line for whatever you're going for. So it's a 2-parter, 2 hours long, big stuff. We did not intend on any of this being this long, but you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. These are important times.
Right. This is a big week. This is a big week. So we are very excited. Also in the show notes, of course, is that interview with Izzo that Justin Roh did. It's very exciting. I edited it in Final Cut Pro, so please go and watch that on behalf of me. It is very important to me that you do that, and that is all. Please sign us off, Sydney.
I have one thing to say and one thing to say only. Go Green, beat Michigan. Have a good day. I guess that was 3 things. Whatever. Bye.